You promised yourself you would never become them. Maybe you said it as a teenager, behind a slammed door. Maybe you only ever said it in the quiet of your own head. But you made a vow. Whatever your mother did, whatever your father was, that cold silence, that temper, that worry that never switched off, you were going to be different. And then one ordinary day, you heard it. A phrase came out of your mouth in exactly their voice. A reaction rose up in you that you recognized instantly, because you'd spent your whole childhood on the receiving end of it, and something in you went cold. If you felt that small horror of catching your parent looking back at you from the inside, this video is about why it happens. And it is not because you failed. It's because of something Jung understood about the human psyche that almost no one is taught. I'm the voice of shadow and self. I read the psychology so you don't have to. And I tell you the parts about yourself most people would rather not say out loud. So here's one. The vow to never become your parents is very often the exact thing that turns you into them. Let me explain. Jung said that what we resist persists. And more than that, what we refuse to look at consciously, we are doomed to live out unconsciously. He put it bluntly. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Read that again. You will call it fate. You'll call it just how I am. You'll call it, they made me do it. But what's really running the show is a pattern you never turned around to face. Here's how the trap closes. When you were young, the painful things your parents did got pushed down into your shadow. That storehouse of everything too overwhelming to hold. You didn't process your father's anger. You were a child. You survived it. You didn't integrate your mother's anxiety. You just absorbed it. It went into the dark, unexamined, with a big label on it that said, "Not me. I will never be this." But here's the cruel mechanism nobody warns you about. Anything you bury in the shadow with a label of "not me" doesn't get weaker. It gets autonomous. Because you refuse to look at it, you can't see it operating. And what you cannot see, you cannot control. So the very trait you swore off waits in the dark. And then, under stress, under exhaustion, in the exact moments you have no spare attention to catch it, it drives. Your father's temper flares through you before you've decided anything. Your mother's worry speaks in your voice before you've chosen the words. You become them not despite the vow, but through it. Because the vow was made of refusal. And refusal is just another word for not looking. There's a deeper layer still, and Jung had a name for it. The family unconscious. We don't just inherit our parents' eyes and their hands. We inherit their unlived lives, the grief they never grieved, the anger they never owned, the dreams they abandoned. Jung observed that nothing has a stronger psychological effect on a child than the unlived life of the parent. The things your parents refused to face didn't vanish when they had you. They got handed down like a sealed box to be carried by the next generation. And if you don't open the box and look inside, you'll carry it exactly as they did. And one day, without meaning to, you'll hand it to someone you love. This is why I'll just try harder not to be like them never works. Willpower operates in the conscious mind. The pattern operates beneath it. You can't out-discipline something you refuse to see. You'll only exhaust yourself while it runs in the background. Trying harder to not be them keeps all your attention fixed on them, which keeps the pattern fully charged. So, what actually breaks the chain? Not resistance, recognition. The work Jung pointed to is to turn around and finally face the thing you've been running from your whole life. Not to forgive on command, not to excuse what shouldn't be excused, but to look at it clearly, in the light, as an adult, with the eyes you didn't have when you were small. It begins with a question most people never ask. Instead of, how do I make sure I'm nothing like them? Ask, what did they carry that they never looked at? And where is that same thing living in me? That single turn of attention changes everything. Because the moment you can see the pattern, name it, feel where it sits in your body, watch it, try to rise, it stops being fate and starts being a choice. The anger still flickers, but now there's a half second of space between the spark and the act. And in that half second lives your entire freedom. There's something else here, gentler and rarely said. When you finally look at the trait you inherited, you often find a frightened person underneath it, not a villain. Your father's temper was probably fear he was never allowed to name. Your mother's anxiety was probably love with nowhere safe to land. Seeing that doesn't erase the harm, but it lets you separate the wound from the person.